The raven arrived at Winterfell just before dawn. Its black feathers were slick with snow, its breathless message sealed with wax, not bearing the golden lion, but a dire wolf. Ned Stark's hands trembled slightly as he read the letter. Robb watched. His father's face shift, not with confusion, but a hard, steady resolve. The letter came from Riverrun. It was signed by Edmure Tully, and the words inside were simple and chilling. Tywin Lannister is dead. Ser Jaime captured. Lannisters broken at the Battle of the Golden Tooth. The war had only just begun, and somehow House Lannister, with all its gold, soldiers and pride, had lost everything in a single battle. Ned looked up slowly, meeting his son's eyes. Robb summoned the bannermen. That morning, the halls of Winterfell were silent with shock. The Lannisters, those proud lions, smug and untouchable, were supposed to be the true threat. Everyone expected them to tighten their grip on the throne after Robert's death. But Tywin Lannister, the cunning old lion, was now rotting in the snow-covered hills of the west, killed in a surprise maneuver led by a coalition of riverlords and Northmen who had moved faster, struck harder, and gambled everything on one devastating assault. At Riverrun, Catelyn Stark stood beside her brother, her hands clenched tight as she stared into the fire. Her sons were still in danger, but the news gave her the tiniest flicker of hope. Jaime Lannister had been captured alive, and the whispers said he fought with the rage of a cornered beast, but it hadn't saved him. "He's the Queen's brother," Edmure reminded her, "and the King's uncle. They'll come for him." Catelyn nodded. "Let them." In King's Landing, chaos broke through the Red Keep like a plague. Cersei Lannister smashed a wine goblet against the wall when the news arrived. Blood stained her white sleeves as she screamed at Pycelle, at Varys, even at her own son. Joffrey watched in silent confusion, his lips curled in a sneer too practiced for his age. "They lied," Cersei hissed, pacing like a madwoman. "They lied. My father cannot be dead. Jaime cannot be captured. They are Lannisters." But the ravens kept coming. Lord Tywin was slain by northern swords. Jaime was being held in Riverrun's deepest cells. Sir Kevan was missing, presumed dead. The gold supply from Casterly Rock was no longer flowing, and the soldiers, those paid for loyalty hounds, were deserting in packs. With the Lannisters crippled, the balance of power in Westeros shifted like a tide pulled by a bloody moon. Renly Baratheon saw his moment. He raised his banners in the south, declaring himself the true king. Stannis, already sharpening his sword on Dragonstone, prepared to strike, and in the north the wolves began to howl. Robb Stark rode south with 20,000 men, his father's banner flying above him. But this time there would be no red wedding, no delay at the twins. The Freys, seeing which way the wind blew, bent the knee quickly. Even Walder Frey, for all his pettiness, was smart enough to see the lions had lost their teeth. On the road to Riverrun, Robb turned to Theon. "If we strike now, King's Landing will be exposed." Theon grinned. No lions to guard it, just a spoiled boy on a throne and his drunk mother. But Ned Stark, more cautious, sent a raven to King's Landing first. He offered peace. He offered justice. He demanded the throne return to its rightful heir. Stannis, by law. Joffrey, of course, refused. He had the crown and the swords of the city. He believed that was enough. It wouldn't be, because behind the crumbling walls of the capital, Varys was already making plans. Littlefinger, sensing the tide shifting, began whispering in Sansa's ear. And in the east, a silver-haired girl with dragons was listening to her own spies, learning the lion no longer ruled the jungle. The Game of Thrones had changed, but the game was far from over. The Red Keep had never felt so cold. Even in the heart of summer, Cersei sat on the Iron Throne, not as Queen Regent, but as a cornered lioness. Her hands trembled, but her eyes remained defiant. Joffrey slouched beside her on the dais, one leg over the other like he was holding court in a brothel. "Not a kingdom on the edge of collapse. Tell them," he barked, voice cracking, "tell them I am their king." The small council stood in quiet horror. Varys smiled softly, offering no resistance. Pycelle stammered something about loyalty. "And gods." Only Peter Baelish stepped forward. "The Lannisters have lost considerable support. The crown's debts are unpaid. The gold cloaks are uneasy. And the people, well, they're starving, Your Grace." Cersei's voice was steel. Behind her son's tantrum. "We still have the city. We still have the Red Keep." "You have walls," Baelish said, "but no gold to feed the rats inside them, and no allies to break the siege when the wolves arrive." That night, she sent ravens to Dorne, to the Reach, even to the Iron Bank. Most went unanswered. Those that did reply offered honeyed words and veiled threats. Without Tywin to pull the strings, the Lannister name no longer opened doors. It closed them. Meanwhile, at River Run, Jaime Lannister sat chained in a stone cell beneath the castle, stripped of his golden armor and cocky pride. His beard grew wild. His hands, once praised for swordplay, were blistered and bloodied. Catelyn Stark visited him every few days. She stared through the bars like he was an animal. Jaime always smiled. "Come to confess your undying love for me?" She said nothing, but every visit seemed to chip away a piece of his arrogance. "You should kill me," he said once. "Before your son marches on the capital. Otherwise Joffrey will send heads back north, and yours will be among them." Catelyn turned slowly. "My son is not like yours." "No," Jaime whispered. "He has a father." Robb Stark's army moved. Like thunder. Every village they passed brought new volunteers. The North and the Riverlands stood united. And when they camped outside Harrenhal, they met an unlikely ally, Rose Bolton. He came bearing gifts, intelligence, scouts, and his quiet, eerie voice that never seemed to rise or fall. His bastard Ramsay stayed behind. But Rose rode with the army now, earning Robb's trust with every silent promise of loyalty. In truth, the Boltons saw opportunity. Chaos was their element. But for now, Rose bent the knee. King's Landing was already unraveling, riots in Flea Bottom, bread lines turned to bloodbaths. Joffrey ordered executions to instill fear, but fear alone could not hold a kingdom. Sansa Stark, still trapped in the Red Keep, had become a symbol of something she didn't fully understand. A wolf in lion's claws. The small folk whispered about her. Some pitied her, others prayed for her. And one night, during a storm that shook the very walls of the city, she found a note tucked in her bed. "When the bells toll, run to the Godswood. There is a way out. Trust only the spider." She burned the message before dawn. Across the sea, in a city of pyramids and heat, Daenerys Targaryen stood beside her growing dragons and listened to the news brought by spies. "The lions are fallen," they said. "The north rises, the throne is weak." She turned to Ser Jorah. "Then it's time." Time for what? To remind them that dragons are not myths, and neither am I. Back in Westeros, as Robb crossed the Trident, word spread like wildfire. Winter is coming, and this time it marches with wolves, not snow. The bells rang for peace, but the city prepared for war. From the outer walls of King's Landing, black smoke could be seen curling over the horizon. Robb Stark's host was days away. Every bird from the north carried darker omens. The Freys had pledged their full strength to Robb. The Riverlords had rallied behind their Stark blood, and even houses once loyal to the crown, like the Crakehalls and the Swifts, had declared neutrality. The Golden Lion banners no longer commanded fear. They now drew mockery, graffiti, and curses. And deep within the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister drank herself into a stupor each night, while whispering to her maids, "They'll come for my son. They'll come for us." Her paranoia was not without merit. The small council had begun to fracture. Varys was seen less often, his whispers fading into silence. Pycelle grew quiet and frail, often muttering prayers under his breath. Baelish. Gone. He'd vanished one night under the pretense of securing food from the Reach and never returned. Cersei cursed his name, but truthfully, she missed his lies. Lies were easier to bear than silence. In the Godswood, under moonlight, Sansa waited with her heart pounding in her chest. The trees swayed in the dark wind, and her breath fogged in the night. She wore plain clothes now, no silk, no jewelry. She looked like a maid, not a lady. Then he appeared, stepping from the shadows, like he was made of them. Varys, he bowed. The city is no longer safe for you, my lady. I have prepared a ship. You'll be taken to White Harbor. From there, you'll return to your brother. Sansa looked past him, back toward the towers of the Red Keep. What if I stayed? What if I helped stop him? Varys raised a brow. Joffrey is not a man to be stopped. He is a fire, my lady. The more you try to contain it, the faster it spreads. That night, as the city slept uneasily, Sansa Stark vanished. Some claimed she jumped from the walls. Others whispered that Cersei had her killed in secret. Only a few knew the truth, and they stayed silent. By the time Robb's banners were visible from the city walls, the gold cloaks were openly deserting. Half of them refused to obey Joffrey's orders. Some joined the crowds, some slipped away. In the night, others went to the highest bidder, whoever that would be. Robb did not come alone. His uncle Edmure rode beside him, and behind them flew the banners of House Tully, House Mormont, House Karstark, and a dozen more. But most shocking of all, flanking the host, was Stannis Baratheon. He had arrived with ships, discipline, and fury. The North had agreed to support his claim to the throne in return for justice for Ned Stark and peace for the realm. Ned, now in Riverrun, would not return to the capital he once served. He had sent a letter ahead. Joffrey must surrender. The Queen must stand trial. The people must be spared. But Joffrey refused. He stood on the Iron Throne as the siege began, laughing like a mad child, pointing at the walls as catapults roared in the distance. "Let them come," he screamed. "Let them all come." Cersei stood in the shadows behind him, a small vial of wildfire hidden in her sleeve, just in case, her last, most desperate secret. In the dungeons, Tyrion sat alone in the dark. He hadn't been seen in weeks, not since he'd spoken against Joffrey, in council and been imprisoned for treason. He'd expected execution, but none came, only silence, until now. Footsteps echoed down the stone hallway. The door creaked open, and there, holding a torch, was Bronn. "You ready to get the hell out of here?" he asked with a grin. Tyrion blinked. "Depends. Is the world still burning?" Bronn smirked. "No, but it's about to." Outside the city walls, Robb's army prepared to strike. Inside, the powder keg waited for one spark, and dragons were still coming. The first stone hit the walls of King's Landing just after sunrise. It came from a trebuchet wrapped in flayed skin, House Bolton's banner. The message was clear. There would be no mercy. A second stone followed, this one dipped in pitch and lit a flame mid-air. It struck a watchtower, sending men tumbling like puppets with their strings cut. From the Red Keep, the sound of bells rang loud and fast. Panic, not surrender. Joffrey screamed from the battlements. "Fire back! Kill them all! I want their heads on spikes by midday!" But the ballista crews had already fled. The gold cloaks guarding the southern gate dropped their weapons and vanished into the alleys. The Lannisters had gold, but no soldiers, left willing to die for it. Inside the city, fires broke out as mobs rioted through the streets. The people were starving, and now war was literally falling from the sky. Carts overturned, shops looted, even the Sept of Baelor was desecrated. Graffiti, scrawled in blood across its sacred stones, "The North remembers." Cersei, half mad with fear, retreated to Maegor's holdfast with Tommen. The boy clung to her skirts, shaking. "Where's Joffrey?" he asked. She didn't answer. Joffrey was still on the walls, commanding no one, barking orders to ghosts. His crown was crooked, his voice hoarse, his eyes wild. In the throne room, Tyrion Lannister walked in like a ghost himself, filthy, blood-caked and half-limping from his escape through the tunnels. The few guards left raised their spears, but paused. They knew who he was, and perhaps more importantly, they knew who wasn't in charge anymore. Tyrion made it to the base of the Iron Throne. Joffrey turned, furious, like he was seeing a shadow. "From his nightmares, you traitor, you should be dead!" "Should be," Tyrion croaked, "but death's a little more selective these days." He stepped closer. "You lost, Joffrey. There's no kingdom left to rule. The people hate you. The army's gone. Even Cersei is hiding in a corner with the last of your imaginary power. I'm the king," Joffrey shrieked, spit flying from his lips. "I'll have your tongue." But no one moved. The few remaining guards exchanged looks, uncertain. The crown on Joffrey's head now weighed more like a noose than a title. Then the doors to the throne room burst open. Robb Stark entered first, armor dented, blade red with blood. At his side, Stannis Baratheon walked like vengeance made flesh, his eyes fixed straight ahead. And behind them came Ned, alive, worn, but very much breathing. Joffrey paled, stumbling back toward the throne. "No, no! You're dead! You're supposed to be dead!" Ned stepped forward. "Not yet." Silence stretched across the room like a blade. Stannis didn't waste words. He raised his voice. "Joffrey Baratheon, you are no true-born son of King Robert. You are the bastard of incest, born of deceit. You are not king. You never were." Joffrey screamed, lunging for a dagger hidden in his robe, but Robb moved faster. The sword came down in a clean arc, and with one final shriek, the reign of the boy king ended in blood. No trial, no mercy, just steel. Cersei felt it before the news even reached her. She was in the holdfast, staring at the last drops of wildfire in her hand, when her knees buckled. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She whispered something, maybe a name, maybe a curse, and swallowed the vial. Tommen found her minutes later, still, cold, gone. The Lannister reign had ended not with a coronation, but with ash, steel, and suicide. Outside the city, the banners of the wolf and the stag flew side by side. Inside, the throne room was soaked in red, but the war was not over, not yet, for across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen was preparing to land, with ships, unsullied, and fire-breathing gods at her command. And in the north, a cold wind howled, louder with each passing day. The city stank of death and smoke. With Joffrey gone and Cersei dead by her own hand, King's Landing fell into silence. Not peace, just a pause. The kind of quiet that comes when everyone's too exhausted to bleed anymore. Ned Stark stood once more in the Red Keep, but the halls were hollow now. The Iron Throne, soaked in his enemy's blood, felt colder than the north. He didn't want it. He had never wanted it. But power doesn't ask for permission. It only demands response. Stannis Baratheon declared himself king the next morning. "By law, I am the rightful heir," he said. "The Lannisters were usurpers. Joffrey was a bastard. This realm needs order, not sentiment." Robb Stark listened, arms crossed, jaw tight. "And who gave that order when you stood by and watched my father fall? They almost came to blows right there, but Ned intervened. We cannot fight each other, not again, not while the realm bleeds." In the end, it was agreed. Stannis would rule the south, from the Stormlands to the capital. The north would secede, free under House Stark, an uneasy truce built not on trust, but on mutual exhaustion. Tyrion was spared execution by Ned's intervention, but exiled. "You're no lion anymore," Ned told him quietly. "Find a place, far from the throne, and stay there." He left the next morning with Bronn, vanishing into the Free Cities. Sansa returned home under stark colours, her eyes harder now, her words fewer. She hugged her father in silence, but part of her was gone, left behind in the dungeons and corridors of the Red Keep. The throne stood, for now. But in the Far East, Daenerys Targaryen landed in Westeros, and she wasn't here to ask for favours. Dragons blackened the sky over Dragonstone. The small folk called it a miracle. The lords called it a threat. Daenerys arrived not as a beggar queen, but as a conqueror, with unsullied Dothraki and fire behind her eyes. She met with emissaries, burned those who insulted her bloodline and claimed the legacy her family once held. Stannis sent a raven. "You are no queen. I am the rightful king," she sent back ash. Robb watched from the north, concerned but distant. "Let the southern lords play their games," he said to his bannermen. "We've lost enough Starks to their throne." But Ned knew better. "She won't stop at Dragonstone. Fire and blood remember no borders." Meanwhile, whispers from the wall began to grow louder. The Night's Watch sent ravens. Strange sightings beyond the wall, wildlings gathering, cold rising, but no one listened. No one ever did until it was too late. Arya returned home at last, changed, deadly and silent. She'd seen more death than most grown warriors. When Robb saw her spar, even he was unsure whether to be proud or afraid. "I'm not a little girl anymore," she told him one night. He nodded. "No, you're not." The North tried to heal, but healing in Westeros was never easy and never permanent. The South erupted in fire again. Daenerys landed near Storm's End with her forces. The Reach, leaderless since the Lannisters fell, swore to her quickly. Tarlis resisted, so Drogon lit Horn Hill into molten ruin. Stannis prepared for war once more. He had learned from Blackwater. No more pride, no more arrogance, but he had no dragons. The two armies met near King's Landing. The city, already broken, became a battlefield. Again, Robb refused to involve the North until a raven arrived. Sansa had been captured during a southern diplomatic trip. A rogue house loyal to Stannis saw her as leverage. "The Wolf Girl," they called her. Robb flew into fury. He swore she'd be safe. Ned, now older and quieter, simply said, "Then let us remind them what wolves do when cornered." The North marched once more, not for thrones, not for power, but for blood. Stannis lost again, this time not to politics, but to fire. Daenerys' dragons shattered his lines. Drogon burned his ships, his men, and finally, Stannis himself. Daenerys walked through the ashes of the battlefield and stood before the Iron Throne, empty, waiting. She placed her hand on it, but did not sit. "I came to break the wheel," she whispered, "not become its prisoner." The wall broke on a moonless night. It wasn't war horns that echoed, but silence, a silence so deep it smothered sound itself. White Walkers had returned. They swept through Eastwatch by the Sea like a wave of death, cold, relentless, unstoppable. Final Raven reached Winterfell. Jon Snow, now Lord Commander, wrote only this: "The dead are coming, all of them." The petty squabbles of men shattered overnight. Robb, Daenerys, and what few southern lords remained formed a last alliance. They met at Moat Cailin, the halfway point between their shattered realms. "We must fight together," Daenerys said, "or die alone." Robb offered her the words of the North. Winter is here, dragons flew north, wolves howled through the trees, and from beyond the wall an army of ice marched south. The throne still stood, but for once no one fought for it, because what mattered now was survival, and in the end that was the cruelest twist of all. The Lannisters had fallen, but the game was never really about them. It was always about who'd be left standing when winter came. The end.